It began with the forging of the great films. The threads were given by Tolkien, wisest and fairest of beings. Rights were granted to Jackson, great miner and craftsman of the Mountain of Lore. And 9 hours were gifted to the race of men. But they were all deceived, for another show was made. In the land of Amazon, in the fires of Mount Prime, the Dark Lord Bezos forged in secret a master flop. And into this show he poured his money, his greed, and his will to dominate all film. One show to ruin them all. One by one, the corrupt fell to the wealth of the show, but there were some who resisted. A last alliance of the books and movies fans marched against the corporate shills. And when all hope had faded, the free Tolkienians united their voices, and Bezos, the enemy of the free people of Middle-earth, was defeated. Well. After years of anticipation, speculations, teasing promotions, debates and battles in the trenches of Twitter and YouTube, the world stood still to witness the second coming of Lord of the Rings. So was it the second coming of Jesus, or the emergence of the Antichrist? If you're familiar with the disastrous marketing campaign that led up to this show, skip to this time code. Or don't. It all began in 2017 when Amazon acquired partial rights to The Lord of the Rings on TV, because Mr. Worldwide Shipping wanted his own Game of Thrones. We're just getting started and this guy fucked it up already. You see, Game of Thrones was a global phenomenon. The world had never seen anything like it. But Lord of the Rings is something very different. They're both fantasy, and that's where similarities end. Lord of the Rings is considered to be high fantasy. It revolves around clear-cut heroes and clear-cut villains. It's the classic tale of good versus evil. Unlike Game of Thrones, which was dark fantasy. It was violent, gory, full of unnecessary sex scenes, and the lines of good and bad are entirely up to you. But time waits for no industry. Years went by and wokeness had sank its teeth deep into entertainment. Franchise after franchise, they were all sacrificed on the altar of diversity and representation. Lord of the Rings was next in line, and trust between studios and fans was a distant memory because they were burned so many times. The road to Lord of the Rings had red flags planted on both sides. The fate of this IP seemed to be doomed. But truth be told, all of us underestimated the power of Tolkienians. Just a side note, every company should just thank Amazon for sacrificing all this money to show them how not to advertise a show. First of all, the showrunners declared it will be modernized and updated to appeal to a bigger audience, as if one of the best-selling books of all time needs to be more appealing, as well as disregarding the popularization the movies already did. They also announced that they will introduce new characters because, The Lord of the Rings only has 3.5 characters in it. But they reassured everyone that they will stick to the lore.
So that was a fucking lie.
However, the main focus was the diversity and representation.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Finally, they thought they could deceive people by inviting super fans that nobody even heard of.
Who the fuck is that guy?
All the previous marketing didn't bode well with the hardcore or casual fans. The hardcore fans despised the idea of original characters and bending the lore to the Dark Lord's will. Even casuals like me didn't want to witness another franchise being resurrected only to get butchered in the goriest of ways. Amazon, being the dumb fucks they are, instead of trying to win over the fans, they tried to score wins against the fans.
You weren't supposed to do that.
And thus began the accusations of every Estenphobe imaginable. I swear insults were handed out like candy in a carnival. And now it was time for the fans to strike back. Everyone drew their sort of ratio, and every trailer that was released was ratioed into oblivion. The Rings of Power lost the battle before it even began. Remember the 2nd of September, a day when a tale was told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. We begin with an epilogue even worse than mine. Yes, that's how bad it was. Introduces us to a once beloved character, perverted into a selfish, egotistical asshole. If you're worried about spoilers, I'm not exaggerating when I say there is nothing to spoil. But for what it's worth, I'll give you a heads up when I'm about to explain something in detail. I hope to start by giving you a plot summary, but honestly, I tried to figure out what was the show trying to say, and I failed miserably. That is the first disaster of this show. The show spent 25% of its season introducing characters, locations, and world building with zero tension or intrigue. My emotional journey within these 2 hours, which definitely felt like 5, was a flat one. You might think it's a slow burner. It's not. House of the Dragon is what you call a slow burner. By the way, I'm not gonna sing the praises for House of the Dragon because it still has a lot to prove. But this show is abysmally boring. I don't think I've ever seen a show say so many things without really saying anything. It's just a bunch of characters talking to each other with a handful of poorly executed fight scenes with shaky cameras and choppy edits like it's a fucking YouTube video. Speaking of scenes and sceneries, the show looks like it cost $1 billion. The locations honestly look gorgeous, especially Khazad-dûm. But honestly, some of the costumes look like they were stolen from my grandma's closet. The music was really meh, and it was played non-stop. Like, God, please give us a break. And it wasn't as good as the God of War theme. What does God of War have to do with this? Well, it's the same composer. Anyway, the biggest problem with this show is the characters. Whoever was in charge of casting should never be hired ever again. I don't want to keep mentioning Game of Thrones, but they understood that you need to bring in household names. Sean Bean, Charles Dance, and so on to carry the first season or two until the young actors grasp how they should play their characters. In the Rings of Power, nobody fits the role they're supposed to play. They don't even look like their parts. And the performances are just shit across the board. The only characters that looked their part was the dwarves. Maybe Gil-galad kinda looks like a High King, but I've never read the books, so I don't know. But the rest are awful. The Harfoots, or not hobbits, are just homeless cringe. Every scene they were in, I felt like
Some big brolic black dude named fucking Raquise pulled a fucking bedsheet over the head of my head and just proceeds to skull fuck me!
And man, did the show spend a lot of time with them. But the worst 3, in my opinion, have to be, first of all, Celebrimbor, who looks like Joe Biden waiting to sniff another kid, or Elrond, who just looks too feminine and too young. Good lord, how do we go from this to this? And of course, the worst has to be Galadriel. First of all, she looks constipated 99% of the time. She has as much charisma as a fucking bamboo. Considering she's the central figure of the show, Morphid looks morbid. And she didn't receive any help from the script. This script achieved into making her the first female character to be a Karen and a Mary Sue at the same time. My god, this show is out to achieve the wrong milestones. Now I'm going to discuss some of the so-called plot, so skip to this timecode if you don't want anything spoiled. To be honest with you, I have no fucking idea what the plot was. It was just separate events of boring shit. If my explanation is about to sound disjointed, well, that's what the show felt like to me. We begin with a bad copy of the prologue from the trilogy that glosses over Morgoth and the war that's been happening, which, you know, could be interesting to watch, but suddenly the show decided to skip it for some reason. And hands down the fakest pseudo-intellectual dialogue ever. You see what I did there? Then we have Galadriel climbing the wall from Game of Thrones, then the fight with the ice troll, which annihilates half of the elves. But Galadriel slays him without breaking a fucking sweat. A strong female character slaying a troll. What could this show be trying to say? Oh, please no, the symbolism, I can't take it. Remember when it took the entire fellowship to defeat one troll?
Good old days. Yeah, like the good old days.
Then all the elves pussy out except for the real cunt. The show tried to tell us that they're cowards, but I was like, they're right. She's disobeying the king's orders. Sauron hasn't been seen in centuries, and they almost got wiped out by a single troll. And they're in no condition to fight. So they go back and Fimron tells Galadriel to put up her sword, and then, this happened.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I have seen.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Once more, they tried to show him as a coward. And once more, I was like, the guy's fucking right! First of all, she's a terrible leader. And she's risking the lives of her soldiers for her own vengeance. And she wants to take on Sauron with a handful of soldiers? Like, what the fuck, dude? But the writers were high in feminism, low on creativity. Instead of punishing her, Gil-galad tells her to fuck off to the Undying Lands. But she jumps ship at the last moment. Good luck swimming across the Atlantic. Then she finds a raft with a very shady individual. And I'm gonna stop here for a second. I don't know for sure, but I heard that this is Sauron. I really hope, from the bottom of my heart, and for the sake of my own sanity, or whatever is left from it, that this is not Sauron. Because if they turn Galadriel and Sauron into forbidden love, I'm gonna fucking lose it. Anyway, Discount Godzilla attacks them and he saves her. Then we have the most awkward romance ever between this elf and strong woman number 2. Also, there's Durin and Fimrond arguing like high school teenagers. And finally, the most unnecessary of unnecessary characters. The whole Harfoot plotline wastes a lot of time on what I think is theoretical comedy. They're trying to make a comedy. I don't know. Like, are we supposed to laugh? I'm not sure. The discount Sam and Frodo find discount Gandalf. So there you have it. This is the description of the messy events. Again, can anyone please tell me which one is the main plot? The only indication I got is it's the Galadriel plot because they made her the center of the show, I guess. Also, call me crazy, but even a casual like me knows Galadriel isn't the main character in the Lord of the Rings. However, if you take away the visuals and remove the Lord of the Rings name from it, you're gonna end up with a below average fantasy show with an incomprehensible plot that fails to capture the sense of an epic story. The magic doesn't feel majestic and the elves look like average Joes with pointy ears. Even characters fast travel like they're in fucking Skyrim. And the clunky dialogue sounds like it was written by Tommy Wiseau.
Did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
And lastly, everyone knew this is gonna be a giant turd, but no one expected this to be boring. If you judge this on an average of 7 out of 10, this is maybe a 4. A 5 if you're in generous mode. But to judge it as Lord of the Rings, this is a round empty 0. To put this show in the same sentence with the Jackson trilogy is an insult. I know the show hasn't even started yet, but so far it's a dumpster fire. Could it get better? I hope so, but I highly doubt it. In my opinion, Amazon now have 3 options. The first one is cancel the show and cut their losses. Because resuming this is basically burning cash just to gain the hate of more people. The second option is to scrap the first season and hire an entirely new cast of writers and actors and showrunners. Or the third option, which I recommend, is to sell the rights because people will never receive another Lord of the Rings product from Amazon with goodwill. But after all this, what do I know? I'm just a schizophrenic taking a shit who occasionally snaps. Peace.